Thanks for staying with us. The South African Human Rights Commission has called for immediate reforms in the country's school uniform and appearance policies. And the Commission was briefing the Portfolio Committee on Basic Education. Let's get more details now from the SAHRC's Eastern Cape head, Dr. Ellen Carter. Dr. Carter, thank you so much for your time. Let's start firstly with discussing some of these reforms that you're calling for.
Thank you so much, and good evening to your viewers. After an investigation and an inquiry we hosted into this matter, we've made quite a number of recommendations and findings in respect of what we perceive to be the over-regulation of school uniforms and appearances. Now, some of these recommendations, as we've also tabled it with the Portfolio Committee in Parliament, include immediate reform when it comes to the policing of natural hair. Now, when we speak about natural hair, we include everything from afros to braiding. And we're also saying that the length of hair of boy children should not be policed as the length of hair of girl children are surely not policed. So we are going to look out for the responses, the formal responses of the department, but we are very encouraged after hearing them during the presentation from the Minister at the Portfolio Committee sitting.
And especially because, you know, this conversation is also happening in the context of some of what we've seen in schools, where a child would come to school and they have their natural hair and it's looked at as if it's untidy and, you know, certainly something that the school says it's against their policies or they look unkempt. And that still raises a lot of concern, especially if you still have such behavior in 2024.
Absolutely. Our report looked into all of that, especially the concept of neatness and tidiness that we say is quite Eurocentric in the manner in which the South African schools currently is applying it. And what we said as well, and when we went into a deep dive into what the current legal precedent is saying, is a child wearing their natural hair can never be constituted as misconduct. So unfortunately, there's rules and procedures in terms of schools' uniform policies where if a child is found guilty of misconduct once or twice, that they are put through disciplinary hearings. And this may be as a result of just wearing their natural hair.
And you look at the issue of school uniform as well, you know, apart from the over-regulation of it, there's also this concern around the affordability of the school uniform in some of these instances as well, because you see in some of the schools, yes, you know, some parents can be able to afford, but in others, they simply can't, and they can be prejudiced by this in some of the schools.
Yes, you are absolutely correct. And that's why we said this even becomes an equality issue, because we're looking at the socioeconomic climate in South Africa, and we have to make it as easy as possible for children to access their Section 29 rights as it's contained in the Bill of Rights. So what we've found is that the costs of school uniform can be prohibitive. And we have asked, including some other recommendations as well, that the department looks at capping the costs of school uniforms, because we must make it as easy as possible for caregivers also to get their kids to school.
Let's talk about something that I found very interesting in your statement, as you're saying that you're calling for the abolishment of prescribed underwear for girls, as well as removing any hair policies that differentiate between male and female pupils.
I think it's always a question of asking the question of how would one police the color of underwear of girl children at school? And we are imagining a situation where a vice principal will lift the skirt of a girl child 6 years old to test the color of her underwear. And we have found that that is a abhorrent practice, and that we are calling for immediate ceasing of inclusion of this portion of schools' code of conduct and uniform policies. Similarly, we've asked ourselves the question to say that girl children whose hair touches their earlobe are still able to do mathematics. And perhaps that can be the case with boy children as well. So we need to look back to the rights of basic education, go back to the drawing board and say, why are we enforcing policies that may not enable basic education? Things that we've seen might be distractions. The policing of those have now become the distraction. And we are saying, let's go back to the drawing board. Section 29 is very clear, basic education, and let's get the kids to it.
Very briefly then, Dr. Carter, in 2024, did you find that there's still principals who are lifting the skirts to check the underwear of school kids?
Not necessarily, but what we are saying is these are still included in school uniform policies. So let's abolish and let's prevent a case as such, and let's make sure that we look to the safety, the privacy rights and the dignity rights of our girl children.
I was wondering if, and I was going to be very worried if this was still happening, because it's one of those practices that, a lot of parents have decried over time. But thank you so much for that update. Let's see then, what the response is, becomes a formal one then to some of the calls that you've made here. That was Dr. Alan Carter, South African Human Rights Commission's Eastern Cape head.